So, lads, yesterday was the kind of probably the biggest, biggest game, but it was a game where Paige Bueckers played, who's the biggest name in college basketball right now. And this is the real sign where it's there is a gap between Caitlin, Paige, Juju, Caitlin and the rest as far as being a draw. And this is not a talk about basketball. This is purely a talk on the fandom, on the draw. And I talk a little bit more about it in a video a bit later. Well, there will be out an hour that I recorded hours and hours ago about how there's almost maybe the video's already been out, but there's almost a forced, people are almost being forced to hype Paige Bueckers. If they were Caitlin Clark fans and they're not staying in college basketball to hype Paige Bueckers, there's something wrong. Or Paige Bueckers and Juju Watkins fans by not showing up are doing them a disservice. But the reality is or the reason why Caitlin Clark blew up is because of organic growth. It was because the WNBA media was trying to push South Carolina. They were trying to push UConn. And basketball fans gravitated towards the girl from Iowa. That's the reality of the situation. And if you guys agree, subscribe. We are trying to hit 4K by the end of the month. We actually hit 38.8K, which is crazy. We've hit 20 subscribers today, which is really good compared to how we've been doing recently. So really do appreciate that. That would be incredible. But yesterday, in a game in the Bahamas, UConn played for 567 people. USC have had games at home in Los Angeles. In LA, they have had games with 3,000 of their 10,000-seater stadium. I've said this before. Caitlin Clark can go literally anywhere and she would fill it up. If Caitlin Clark played a game in Ireland, let's say she went to the big arena in Belfast, that's 5,000 or 6,000 people it holds, I think. Caitlin Clark, that would sell out in 10 minutes in Ireland. If Caitlin Clark played in the O2 Arena in England, 20,000, people from all over Europe will go to that and sell it out. Juju Watkins plays in Paris. The place is empty. She plays at home, there's 3,000. You go to Paige Bueckers goes to the Bahamas, 500 people. And repeat, 500. 500 people. They are playing in what looks to be, you can see there's a stage. Oh my God, they're not even playing on a basketball, in a basketball gym. They're literally playing in what looks to be an auditorium. They're playing, by the looks of things, they are playing in an auditorium in front of 500 people. And this is UConn. This is a half-empty auditorium as well. And we hear so much about, Paige is bigger than Caitlin. Paige is going to be bigger than Caitlin. It's man, even last year, Caitlin Clark would have filled that up. Everyone who is even close to the Bahamas would have gone to that game. If you heard that you could see Caitlin Clark in a tiny, with only 500 people, you're like, oh my God, I was at the Bahamas game. And that's the difference, is the reality of the situation. It really hits when you see these, they're the fans need to spend more money. The reality is fans need to spend money the way they want to spend money. If a fan wants to see a player, they can see a player. It's not the fault of a fan of Juju Watkins who doesn't want to pay to see her play. It's not the fault of a fan of Paige Bueckers who doesn't want to pay to see her play. Just because fans of Caitlin Clark will pay to see her play. That's the reality of the situation. Is it's nothing to, there's never blame the consumer or the viewer for what they like. And that's the problem, again, with all this WNBA media. And the reality is look, the gap in draw between Paige and Caitlin, or Juju and Caitlin, is bigger than the gap in ability, by the way. If Paige Bueckers plays a game, and I know Dallas sold out their season tickets, they did it without her. Dallas is a team who sold out all their season tickets before they got Paige. Obviously, they sold them with Paige. Imagine if Paige was negative draw. Imagine if they didn't sell them this year after selling them last year. Paige would literally be negative draw for the team. And to say she's not a draw is not true. And to be fair, in 5-6 years' time, Paige Bueckers could be filling out arenas. By the end of her college career, Juju could be filling out arenas. But the reality is they aren't. And we're seeing more and more WNBA media or WNBA type media blaming the fans on not showing up. And it's you don't blame the fans. Simple as that. You do not blame the fans. You don't blame people on how they're spending their money. And that's one of the things that really kind of frustrates me with this whole situation is you've got so many things. You've got so many, again, reasons to be kind of happy. As in, on social media, while obviously they're not showing up to games, on social media, there's more people talking about Juju and Paige than talked about college players previously. There's more people like hyped about what's going on in women's basketball. And like, it's a long-term thing. And obviously this started with Caitlin Clark. It started with her. And the reality is that if someone was as big as Caitlin Clark, or someone that was already in college was going to take over from Caitlin Clark, they would have taken over last year. Because that's reality is Caitlin Clark was in college. They were still in college last year. There's no freshman coming in. I can't forget her name. There's one point guard that's freaking balling as a freshman. I think she's in Ohio State. But like, again, it's not Caitlin Clark. Malaysia full while he has that kind of ultra flare potential, she's having that coached out of her by Dawn Staley. So that's not going to happen. Caitlin Clark or Paige Bueckers is a superb player. She might, when it's all said and done, if any of these are going to be better than Caitlin Clark, it's going to be her. And I don't think it's going to be the case because she's had all her flair coached out of her by Gina Auriemma already. And Juju Watkins is literally, like, at this point in her career, is an inefficient shot chucker. Like, even as a freshman, at this point in her college career, is an inefficient shot chucker. As great as Juju's potential is, she's a 6'2 guard. She's playing more defense this year. But from the day she set foot in USC on offense, she has been an inefficient, high-volume shooter. Like, and if you want to say, oh, Caitlin Clark's inefficient. No, Caitlin Clark, because threes are worth one extra point, is one of the most efficient shooters ever. But, yeah, that just kind of sums it up. Again, playing in an auditorium, a half-empty auditorium, whereas you can guarantee if Caitlin Clark was there, it would have been full up and people would have been sitting on the stage in the auditorium hanging from the damn rafters. Like, that's just the reality of it. Like, you can't force the organic growth that happened with Caitlin Clark. And you can't just assume that when Caitlin Clark's gone, that's going to come with her. But the reality is that you're not going to get that. But there are positive notes to this whole thing, is that more people care about women's college basketball. More people care about like all of this stuff. More people care on social media. More people are trying to watch games. More people are watching the games. And that's a big thing. But the reality situation is that they may never hit the Caitlin Clark numbers again. And there's nothing wrong with that. As long as the numbers are higher than they were before Caitlin Clark, then you've got the most positive outcome. If college basketball is in a better place after Caitlin Clark than it was before Caitlin Clark's boom, then what Caitlin Clark has done is a net positive. If the WNBA ends up being we've already seen it's in a better place with her than it was without her, even non-Caitlin Clark stuff. So that's the reality situation, is that there's going to be a growth. But you can't just force there to be. The Caitlin Clark phenom was something that we're probably never going to see in our lifetime again. This was like, imagine if Jimmermania lasted 2.5 years. That's basically what it would be. It'd be like, imagine if Jimmermania was during his sophomore year and he decided to go back for 2 more years of Jimmermania. That's the reality of the situation. And if Jimmermania got to the final twice, like, we would have never seen anything like it. It would have been like, imagine if JJ Redick and Adam Morrison, if they were both sophomores that year, and then they stayed for 2 more years and battled it out, and were that good for 3 years. Like, that's almost like what would happen with Caitlin Clark. It's a once possibly in a lifetime phenomenon in college basketball. It's a once in a lifetime phenomenon in basketball. And we're seeing now with Paige and Juju, is as great as they are as players, they are nowhere even remotely close. Like, Caitlin Clark playing golf will get more people to watch than in a lot of situations than Juju or Paige Bueckers playing basketball right now. And we can't just be shocked when we see that they're not as big a draw and then try to make excuses for why fans don't gravitate towards them because they're not pulling from 30. That's the reality of it. People want to watch Caitlin Clark pull from 30 and just became almost infatuated with everything about her because she's not one of these super duper celebrities, even like a Paige Bueckers, where you're going to where you're almost acting like a celebrity. Caitlin Clark literally goes to Butler games because her boyfriend coaches there, golfs, and then sometimes goes to Pacers games. That's literally all it seems like she does in her life outside of play basketball, which means that there's kind of almost like a mystery and intrigue just seeing Caitlin Clark in public, which is not really the same when Paige Bueckers. Like, I haven't seen anything like Caitlin Clark before. The reality is that don't expect these players to be as big a draw as her because realistically, it is a fact that they just simply are not as big a draw as Caitlin Clark. So anyway, that's the video. See you guys.